first of all, I love Bill Barnwell. I love to read his, like, if the Niners are in the playoffs, like, I will absolutely, before I go on to do any kind of a pregame show, I will read his pregame breakdown. His breakdown of the Super Bowl is legendary. I mean, it's pages and it's really really good stuff. And there's and a lot of it, he's highlighting some of the great matchups and the game with. He's so good at kind of highlighting the game within the game.
Right.
Well, he put together a whole mock draft of nothing but trades, which is awesome. So every single team in the mock basically is trading, and his deal was he had a deal with the 49ers. So Barnwell released his mock draft with potential trades for every single pick in the first round, and he has the 49ers trading Trey Lance with all three of their third round draft choices and a sixth round draft choice, all going to the Minnesota Vikings. It looks like. Who has Nick Mullins? Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Niners in turn would get the 21st pick in the draft, and wait for it, Nick Mullins. I can't believe that. I mean, that's unbelievable. That first of all, just without me giving you any more commentary, hearing that trade, what do you think? Who wins that trade? Is that a win for the Niners? Is it a win for the Vikings? How do you view that one?
Wins and loss on that trade, it's very tough to tell, right? We don't know who they would take at pick 21, and so much about Trey Lance is still unknown to us. And so at that point, we would have to wait a couple of years before we would know who would actually win and lose that trade. Now, in terms of if we want to go to that hypothetical, would I do that trade? I would not personally. It's because of this draft in particular, Larry. I think there's maybe, 5 to 10 really, really top high level, definite top 15 pick type players in this draft. And then after that, the drop off, it becomes very, very saturated. Like if you go on any draft rankings, right, from any expert, you would see 1 and 2 be pretty similar across the board at each position. And then 2 through 6 in every position, different people like different guys. And that's the reality of this draft. There's a lot of people that are very, very similarly situated between like probably player number 20 on people's board to player number, 40 or player number 50. And that's where when I look at this particular draft and pick number 21, is that going to be a player that I look like is going to walk into the 49ers and be a game changer to win a Super Bowl this year? Because to me, when you're trading Trey Lance, it's about winning a Super Bowl this year. I'm not sure I can answer that question. I still think having the quarterback when your other quarterback who you think is going to be the starter, having the quarterback, when the other quarterback you think that's going to be the starter is injured, I still think having a quarterback is more valuable, especially one that you think is talented and one you gave so many assets to acquire. So, I mean, when you're talking about trading those 3 first-round picks or 3 third-round picks, I'm having Freudian slip galores here. And Trey Lance, Larry, for just pick number 21 and Nick Mullins, I wouldn't do that. I would prefer to get a veteran, proven player in return for Trey Lance if we're going the route of trading Trey Lance or perhaps an even higher pick.
I just think it's too much. I don't like the trade either. I really don't. I just don't think. I mean, what is Trey Lance worth? I think Trey Lance is probably worth a second round pick. Would you trade a second round pick, 3 third round picks, and a 6th round pick to get to 21 or 22
right
in the first round? I wouldn't. That's not good value. I wouldn't make that trade either. And I don't like Nick Mullins. I don't want Nick Mullins back. Why? What do I need Nick Mullins for? No. I'm not a fan of Nick Mullins. And then I don't want to trade 4 picks and Trey to get 1 pick that's not in the top 10.
Right.
I mean, there's and you're talking to a guy who's really loved some of the players that will be on the board there too. I mean,
okay.
You might be able to get, looking at the board, you might be able to get Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. I love Michael Mayer. Emmanuel Forbes. There's some good players there. You might be able to get a tackle.
Dalton Kincaid.
Dalton Kincaid, if you want a tight end.
Deontay Banks, maybe.
Julius Brents from Kansas State, if you want a big corner. I mean, if you want a great slot safety, slash corner.
Brian
Jartavius
Branch,
Martin from Illinois. Branch.
Sidney Brown.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys there. I mean, Foskey, we mentioned yesterday from Notre Dame. And I like Foskey, to me, of that group, Foskey and Mayer would be really hard to pass up. Not to mention the Northwestern guy, Adi Tamiwa Adibare. That guy's just a freak of nature. So
Yes.
all these guys are there. So and even so, that's too much. That's too much. I would want more than that. I'd want something more than that. I would consider moving Trey, for that pick. And maybe a third, but not all 3/3 and a sixth. And I don't want Nick Mullins. I'd rather just get more. I'd rather hold on to my picks and take a flyer in the draft. I mean, I read today that they said Max Duggan might not get drafted at all. So now what? I'm trading for Nick Mullins, but Max Duggan is available after the draft if you just throw cash his way. So no, I'm not interested in that. Barnwell's interesting, and he's well thought out. But I will say this, it might be, and this is where this whole Trey Lance thing is. You got to see where the rubber meets the road. What's the offers going to look like? What's he actually worth? I saw a Bleacher Report article, and they're like, trade Trey for a fifth and a sixth. One guy was like, trade Trey for a late fourth and an early fifth. It's like, if that's what he's worth in the open market and Bleacher Report's right. I mean, I think the highest pick I think I saw Bleacher Report had him move for was a third. They're not moving a guy they just invested the third pick in the draft in for a singular third-round draft choice. Right. And they're definitely not doing it for a fourth and a fifth or a fifth and a sixth. I mean, so, but then, Vish, maybe we have a higher. I guess the question is this. Has Trey Lance lost a lot of value in the minds in your mind, has he lost a lot of value? Because in my mind, he's lost value, but he's lost value on being the third pick overall in the draft. He hasn't lost value like, ship him out of here, get him out of here. I'll take a fifth, I'll take a sixth. No. I think if you're a team that thinks you're going to line up and steal Trey Lance from the Niners, I think the Niners are going to hold on to him if that's what their offers. If those are the offers they're receiving, fourth, fifth, sixth, they're not trading him. Right?
Yeah,
or do you think, or maybe you disagree with that.
No, I do agree with that. I think that's just the Niners philosophically, right? Like, we saw that last offseason when they were trying to trade Jimmy Garoppolo before they changed their mind later in the offseason. They were pretty standing pat that they were, what was it, reportedly they wanted 2 twos for Jimmy Garoppolo and they were getting offered a third, or they were getting an offered a second and a third that they wanted 2 twos, right? It was something like that. That was reported earlier in the offseason before he had surgery. Because Washington wanted Garoppolo, if I remember correctly, first before they pursued Carson Wentz from Indianapolis. And either way, the Niners were standing pat in terms of what they thought their value should be for a quarterback, right? And I'm assuming it's going to stay similar when they have invested so much in Trey Lance. So I agree with that standpoint. In terms of Trey Lance's actual value, Krug, it is impossible to tell right now. Because You're right, he hasn't changed in terms of his value because he hasn't necessarily done anything on or off the field to disrupt what you would think of him as a prospect, right? So that prospect level still remains, and then he is still cost controlled for at least the next 2 years. So his contract isn't so bad where that's scaring you either. But the issue is Trey Lance was the unique prospect due to the COVID year that came out of college with a historically low number of pass attempts, right? And the entire thing about Trey Lance in that draft, while he was an enigma, was everyone was excited to see what would happen when he would play. We are 2 years from that draft when a lot of people had question marks about him solely because they felt like there wasn't enough experience there to draft a quarterback. And he has gotten next to none in terms of experience in those 2 years, right? He has not played football 3 out of the last 4 years. I think that there would be varying opinions on people on how positive or how skeptical, or whether they're positive or whether they're skeptical on him realizing his full potential as a prospect, because they might be looking at it as, well, we weren't sure about him when we came out, but we would have taken a flyer then because he was talented. Now it's been 2 years and we're still not sure. And I don't know if I would want to use a first round pick when I was already nervous 2 years ago about him not playing enough. And we're 2 years down the road into his career and he's still not played enough.